Hello and welcome to our virtual classroom. Today we're just going to look at the bony landmarks of the shoulder. So if you look to your left you'll see the PowerPoint slides. Straight in front you'll see the skeleton, which we'll use as demonstration, and then if you also look to your right hand side we have a bit more of a zoomed up version for you of the scapula, with some of the origins and insertions on there as well, which we'll look at in more depth in the muscles. So the key landmarks that we're going to look at today are the sternoclavicular joint, clavicle, acromioclavicular joint, acromion, scapula, the spine of the scapula, and the inferior and superior angles of the scapula. So, to start with the shoulder, we know that this is sort of the arm area, so we're going to look at just the general front portion first. So the first bone that I'm sure we all know is quite a prominent one. It's the clavicle. Quite easy to palpate. We can use two fingers to come down that, and we can also pinch the clavicle. It's not covered by a lot of tissue, so you can usually feel that quite well. So that is just a long bone, and it helps basically attach the shoulder to the thorax. This is commonly injured in a falling type movement when we put our arms out and all the pressure is taken out on the clavicle. At either end of the clavicle we have the two joints. So if you have just a look at the PowerPoint you can see where that joint is, just there. If you can't see it zoomed up you'll be able to see it behind you there. So the first one we're looking at is the sternoclavicular joint. So we know that this is the sternum and this is the clavicle. So the sternoclavicular joint is where the sternum and the clavicle articulate. So this joint is interesting. It's actually the only joint that anchors the arm to the body. Obviously the scapula isn't actually anchored, it's muscles that anchor that in. This is the only bony joint that anchors the whole shoulder into the arm. Often strained with an overhead motion. That is the sternoclavicular joint. We'll look at that in the practical to look at how to palpate that. On the other side we then have the acromion. So this is the flat portion of the shoulder. So you can usually see this quite well on our participants. That helps form the shoulder joint, if you will. So it helps form a point of articulation for the humerus to insert and form that ball and socket joint, and it's that flat portion. The acromion is important because it also helps form the acromioclavicular joint, which is obviously where the clavicle and the acromion articulate. This one is broken on this side, so you can see that just there, the point of articulation where the two meet. So yeah, that's the key ones there. So the next thing that we're just going to look at is the scapula. So we can see the scapula on our skeleton here, but we can also see it much better up close here. So you'll be able to see that a little bit better. Also behind you as well if you need to see it. So the whole bone is a flat bone called the scapula. Its main sort of function is to attach all the muscles in the shoulders, and obviously some of the muscles in the back as well. So we can break this up into a few different points, but what we're going to break it up into is just so that we know where each aspect is, and then when we go to the muscles we'll start looking at some of the more specific areas on the scapula. So we have the superior angle of the scapula. So as you look at this is our sort of posterior. We have the clavicle there, so you can see where that would be on the skeleton, just like that. The superior angle is the top portion of the scapula. Okay, so I'll show you how to palpate that in the palpation lessons, but the superior angle is the top angle of the scapula. It's highlighted just there behind you as well if you can't quite see that on there. We then have the posterior, or inferior, sorry. The next one's the spine of the scapula. So if you look at the scapula, you can see quite clearly there's a big spine right down the middle there. This is the spine of the scapula. Quite easy to palpate as well when we look at that. Now the main function of this is attachment of muscles and helping to form that overall joint. So because of this spine you can see that the surface area is increased and muscles can attach onto there and originate from there as well, to make sure that we've got all the muscles that we need in the scapular area in the shoulders. And then the last point is the inferior angle of the scapula. So we had the superior at the top and the inferior is the bottom portion below there. So that is an origin and insertion point for muscles, mainly the latissimus dorsi, but again that'll all be in the muscle lecture. That is the scapula. So that is everything for the scapula and the shoulder.